Hey, everybody doing a live stream. Live streams don't get as much attention as they used to because they've put them in a different tab and YouTube's constantly screwing with something. But it's Saturday morning and I'm waiting to see if anybody's going to get in here even because the way they've hidden live streams now. But what we're going to do is talk about just like my own video. I don't know. What we're gonna do, you'll hear background noise and stuff because this is not gonna be a refined edited video. This is a live stream, and while I'm talking, I'm gonna be working on auto rack coupler conversion. I've got some KD couplers. I'm gonna be converting some auto racks that were troublesome because I tried to run a 100 plus car auto rack train without any success, really. So, but I'm here to talk about tariffs while I work on some of the train stuff. This may be the first time you have ever seen me with glasses on because typically I don't wear glasses. But I'm getting older, they're being more required lately, and I'm going to be working on, like I said, models converting couplers as I talk to you about this. But I went to the Denver train show. I got a lot of questions about tariffs, and I've got a lot of questions about the future of the hobby because of tariffs. So I did as much research as I could and tried to get some information together for you. But I chose the live stream as a venue so that if I see questions pop up, which they come up as they start to pop up there, I can try to cover anything that I thought I was going to cover and forgot or whatever, because live stream is very much on the cuff, right? So what we're going to do is try to keep politics out of it, even though it's a part of it, but I'm going to pick up the step past the political step to where we're at and what's going on. So current political administration in charge has dictated that China tariffs are going to be 125%, and they have actually, when you consider everything, it's going to be more like 145%. So for the layman, they're thinking, okay, a $100 train is now going to be $245. That's not the case. That tariff of 145% is based on what the model train company is paying per item from their supplier, which would be in China, obviously. So as Jason Schron, who's been very transparent and helpful with this subject from Rapido, has said, like if you take a $200 train, the manufacturers obviously have to make money off of that. So let's just say it's 50% off, which I think the numbers are possibly a little better, but I don't know. So say 50% off. So that $200 train from overseas, let's call it a DCC ready locomotive, costs the manufacturer $100. So that is what the percentage of tariffs is on. So now you have a manufacturer that normally be paying $100 paying $245 or $225 if it was a 125% tax. So now that manufacturer has to decide a few things. One, are they going to bring it over to the US at all? Like I think they have the option of just not receiving the product. Two, if they bring it over, who's going to split the costs? Is it going to be the manufacturer takes part of the cost and eats part of that cost? Is it going to be the consumer gets all of the costs? Or are they going to try to split it down the road even further, like with dealers or whatever? There's a lot that goes involved in those decisions as well. So you have a situation where those decisions are going to have to be made. Some manufacturers are saying we've already paused deliveries. Other manufacturers are saying we've taken the products when it was a lower tariff and we've eaten the costs and you guys just didn't even know. And that's, I think, more of along the lines of how it happened before. So there's going to have to be some decisions made, and I think it can harm especially the smaller companies as this goes on. So I know people are panicking. I'm not panicking. It doesn't affect my livelihood at all. If we have a complete stoppage of trains, I'll probably take a break from videos. I may try to cover other subjects or something, but it's probably a good time to take a break. But I am concerned about the people that's livelihoods are attached to this, and that's where the political thing is getting kind of toxic, because you have people that are like, told you, this is what would happen, and it's a big I told you so, but it's attached to people's livelihoods and stuff. And it's so early in the game, nobody knows what's really going to happen. And then people on the other political side of the aisle have like absolutely no critiques at all, which it can be dangerous as well. So I think everybody should view this with a level head, but try to keep it to what's happening. You can't control the politics situations except for every 2 and 4 years, and that's a whole different mess. I've gone 16 years on this channel without getting into politics. I'm not going to start now. But back to what the manufacturers can do and what we can do, I'll explain. Manufacturers can bring that product over at the increased cost. So I'm just guessing here, but let's say a $300 locomotive. And I've got another phone for math because it is Saturday morning and I am tired. But you take a $300 locomotive. Let's just say the manufacturer does pay 50% of that. So it's $150 that they have to pay bringing that in. And then they have to pay 145% tariff. Okay, so that's going to bring that cost up to $367. Okay, so now the manufacturer is bringing that $300 locomotive in and paying $367. Obviously, we're going to have to absorb some of that cost. Are they going to try to sell it to us for $425, $450? I don't know. I don't think it'll exceed that $145. But then again, they also take a risk bringing it in, because if you go ahead and accept that shipment and pay that money and then it sits on the shelves, then you don't have the ability, and you're not having the ability to move it. You have a problem there too. So they're in quite a pickle the longer this goes on. For companies that are in between shipments, not a problem. Companies are about to ship stuff soon, it's going to start being a problem. So will we see, the answer to one of the main questions is, will we see a 145% increase in our cost of models if the manufacturers decide to bring them and sell them? Probably not, unless they're passing every penny along. Most manufacturers are trying to work some sort of cost share with either the factory or their end or dealers. I don't know. But it's unlikely that we'll see the full 145% if they decide to bring it over. If they decide not to bring it over, that's dangerous too, because model train companies, as much as people think are like fat cats sitting on mountains smoking cigars and drinking cognac, every model train company I've seen, with one exception, who really just nailed every scale for a long period of time, you can probably guess who I'm thinking about right now, are not wealthy people. They're not like extremely wealthy people. They operate with very little wiggle room to be able to absorb months of no income. So it's not likely that a company is going to be able to survive if they just pause their products. So they're going to have to make decisions. It could be a lot of different factors. I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm just trying to explain to you how important it is to support the companies during this time if you can. They can have layoffs, they can shut their doors in worst case scenarios, they can pause everything and have people laid off, or like I said, they can bring those increased products over and hope that they sell. Those are all options that can happen on the manufacturer end. What we'd like to see, I think, in terms of everybody, is a pause or an exemption, because this has happened before. People said I'm crazy for saying it. It's historically a fact that during the last Trump administration in 2016, there was an exemption for toy products, which included model trains. So that exemption would allow the companies to operate, bring their stuff in without any problems and any additional tariffs, and then prices don't change, livelihoods aren't affected, and such. So that's what the government could do. So we've covered what the companies can do, right? They've They're either going to have to ship the product at increased cost if this continues, or have to hold the product and not ship it and possibly deal with the ramifications of having no income, or they can, like I said, ship that product at full cost or share the cost. So those are the company options, right? The government options are exempt toy trains and other toys, which are usually in the same category, from these tariffs. Now let's talk about our options. It doesn't work a lot. It's looked at as cheesy a lot, but I did put a template letter that I wrote on my Facebook page at facebook.com/HO Scale Product Reviews that you can send to your senators, your congressmen, the president. Basically focus on the legislative and executive branches of government and hope for the best, and see if things can be changed that way by people talking about it. Because like I said, back to the political point, people are making jokes out of this. They're laughing. Why are you in the hobby? The hobby, you should want the hobby to succeed. If you think the prices were ridiculous now, just wait until these have to be produced in another country that has a higher cost of living than China. And for people saying they should be produced here, it's not going to happen. I've researched this upwards, downwards, sideways. You can get basically low detail level rolling stock produced here in small quantities. You can get low detail parts produced here, like wheel sets and such. You're not going to get highly detailed locomotives produced here because of two reasons. I'm going to be kind of frank here. It's a cultural thing in China to be able to add little detail parts, sit down at a desk, and do that all day for your 8-hour job. Americans are not putting up with that. They don't have the patience. They're going to start messing up. The quality is going to go down. It's cultural, to be precise. It's cultural in a sense that a lot of the people in their family are in that industry, adding little detail parts, assembling little detail parts on these model trains and cranking them out. So you may have some other Asian countries, other countries around the world that can do that, but the US is not going to be able to do that. Now, let's say we get past that point and magically Americans can do that. You're going to have to pay Americans several times the cost. And the estimates I saw are a DCC and sound locomotive, like a $300 Athearn Genesis, running $900 to $1,200. So then we're going to have a problem with nobody wants to buy them. Nobody can afford to buy them. So just keep that stuff in mind, because it's a great idea. Everybody's like, on its face, great idea. Oh, build America, blah, blah, blah. And that can apply to a lot of things that this current political administration is trying to work on. It does not apply to model trains, okay? It just can't. And people say Katie this, and Katie has produced very limited rolling stock and micro trains, very limited rolling stock and kits on the low detail end. I don't know if Micro Trains produces their locomotives here, but again, it's not high detail, high fidelity detail models. As much as I love those two companies, I've got a KD product sitting here right next to me right now. So with that said, the made in the USA thing for model trains, highly detailed rolling stock, highly detailed locomotives, I think any type of locomotives is not going to be an option. It's just not. So all we can do is lobby our Congress people, senators. Technically, the executive branch is where this is going to hang out for the most part, and tell them, hey, Americans' lives can be affected with this. And one other thing I want to talk about with the vitriol, beside the political vitriol, I've talked to people at the Denver train show, messages, so-and-so, it's such a company, did me wrong 3 years ago, I hope they die. That's not helpful. So, you can hope, say one person at a company, and I could probably choose a lot of one people at one companies that get on my nerves. You got to be pretty mad and upset and technically slightly evil to really want them to lose their livelihood, not be able to feed their families, not be able to feed their loved ones, pay their mortgage, pay their rent, whatever the fact is. So take the vitriol out, both the political vitriol with, hey, I didn't vote for this, haha, look at what's happening, and the personal animus of, oh, so and so, the CEO of so and so's company, was treating me like I was, less than at a trade show, and I hope his company goes under. Or so and so works at the company and they're a jerk, so I hope the company goes under. It's not helpful. It's actually self defeating because if you're a model railroader, whatever company it is, now you can't get the products. So my suggestion is support the companies as much as you can. If they come down and they say they're going to have to increase prices, if you can pay them, pay them. If you can't, you can't. That's your personal decision. But just spinning up everybody like this is absurd or whatever, like it's not helpful. If I was a company, I'd probably look into PayPal Pay by 4 or whatever. I got a friend down the road here that uses that a lot, to maybe soften the blow on some of these prices if they end up increasing. And my last point is, this is still very new, very early. So everybody's like, don't panic. And I agree with you, don't panic. But at the same time, if you wait until 0 hour to send out the letters and have support for the companies, it may be too late, both politically and if you're like, if Scale Trains or Walters or Athearn starts bringing in these products, or anybody, and you're like, I'm not buying them, I'm not buying them, I'm not buying them, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, this has gone on a year, yeah, I guess I can buy them. Well, it may be too late financially for those companies. As a matter of fact, I'm not even hearing a year, I'm hearing weeks, months. So just keep that in mind. Not only is it self-defeating to be a model railroader and not want to assist any way you can by sending a letter that's essentially already typed for you or paying a little extra, you're kind of hurting your own hobby, really. So, and if you've got enough stuff like I do and you don't need anything else, that's fine. But hopefully you have a little more connection to the hobby than that, and you've gotten to know the companies, the people at train shows. You realize that some of your fellow modelers are employed by these companies, such as like a couple friends I have here because I'm close to a company in distance, and you would want the best for them, right? So let's be a little more cognizant of that. So yes, the tariffs can have a goal. It's just the niche of the way this hobby operates. It's like there's not a whole lot of options for companies to just be like, yeah, we're going to make it in America. I've seen one company that had the foresight to kind of change countries, but that's a huge cost, huge logistical operation and such. So I understand that other companies would not have the ability to do that as well. So it's going to be an interesting time for the hobby. Hopefully it's short-lived, and this video just is not a big deal, and we have kind of a game plan for next time. But if it goes on for months, you can surely expect to see companies pausing shipments, companies going out of business if they're really small, companies having layoffs. These are all very serious consequences if we cannot either get a pause or an exemption for a pause, or just the tariff thing resolved with China, or an exemption for model trains. So that's essentially where it sits. For more information, I would suggest somebody that knows far more than me, because I can't stand business. I own a few rental properties. I don't even like the YouTube stuff. It drives me nuts having to deal with taxes and stuff with the ad revenue from AdSense, which ends up getting blown times 1,000 on other models. But I'm not a business person. I don't like it. It shuts my brain down. So if you want more information from the business perspective, trains.com did an interview with Jason Schron. You'll probably have to search it in like Google or something, because I couldn't find it very easily. Where David Popp talks to Jason Schron recently about this, and Rapido did a video on their own YouTube channel about the tariffs and how that works. It just gets a little confusing with that, because then it's got to go to Canada, and then it kind of has to come here, and Rapido now established a warehouse here so it can come straight here. So I just wanted to sort through all that murk and find out what was going on, and that is where I wanted to convey to you guys the encapsulated message. And I'm going to summarize it real quick again before I go back to replacing couplers. The model train companies, as it stands, they only have a few options. One, they pass the cost on to us, which is not going to be dollar for dollar. If you're hearing 145% tariffs, it won't be 145% because that 145% is based on the price they pay coming in, which is 50% less than that, usually, or more. So it's going to be a reduced amount, but it's going to be significantly higher. In the example I used, a $300 locomotive could easily be $400 to $415 or $425. Or they can pause shipments until this blows over and not ship stuff, but that's going to hurt them because they don't have the cash flow coming in. Or they can hope that these tariffs are resolved with China, or there's an exemption for the products that are toys and model trains, usually grouped together. And that's what happened in 2016. So I provided a letter on my YouTube or on my Facebook page, facebook.com/HO Scale Product Reviews. If you'd like to write your legislators in either the legislative or executive branch, so the president or legislators, you can do so. It's copy and paste, put your name, put signed by. People were criticizing that I wasn't calling the administration a-holes in the letter for people that are against the administration. Pretty sure it's not going to get very far if you end the letter with "sincerely, you're an a-hole." So that letter is obviously written in a nice tone, regardless of what your political views are, to lobby legislators and the executive branch to change the plan. That's all that the companies can do, and that rolled into what we can do, which is produce that letter, sign it, send it. There's a lot of email, so you just copy and paste it into an email form for the White House or the legislators if you wanted to do that. It's all optional. I'm not forcing you guys to do anything. I'm saying it's probably better now than 6 months down the road when a lot of companies are on life support. And then if the other thing we can do as modelers is if the products come here, we can buy them. Like I said, I hope the companies consider PayPal and Four, because I've been hearing that a lot, and I hear a lot of people are using it, and that may help absorb the blow. So I think that's a good idea for the companies. Other than that, I'm not a businessman, so I don't know. That's just armchair quarterbacking on my part. But I think dealers and model train companies selling direct should consider that. And I think we should try to buy what we can when, in this situation. But that's just what I think. I'm not telling anybody to send the letter. I'm not telling anybody to pay the increased price. And I'm still hoping that this gets resolved, because there are companies that are in between shipments. So we may not see it if it's resolved in a few months. But there's companies that are ready to ship like this week, next month, stuff that's about to hit port that you're absolutely going to see that on. So that's where we sit. Let me see. I know a lot of people are asking questions, and I was so self-absorbed blabbering I didn't get to any. So let me see if I can find any questions. Silly to pretend it's not going to affect people in their hobby. Pan up. Correct. So that's where I'm saying, regardless of where you are on the political spectrum, if you feel like you're "wow, I told you so" type people, you still got to understand there's people involved in this hobby. Americans are involved in this hobby, employed by this hobby. There's a lot of people. I can think off the top of my head of a couple hundred people that are employed by model train companies, just off the top of my head. The math doesn't work. Peter, I don't know which math you're talking about, but I gave you the example that Rapido gave. So I would think they would know. Bad time for everyone with the tariffs. Australia, I've decided to vote my wallet, buy British. Okay, well, that's a thing, I guess. I buy full DCC with sound. Boycotting Chinese products as much as possible until they come to the table and get realistic. Well, that might be what the country's doing, but I'm just letting you know some of the small and even medium and larger sized model train companies will not be able to absorb that blow for a long period of time, or even in some cases a short period of time. So I think I've covered most of the questions. Build American, buy American, better for American people. I agree. There's a lot that can be built here. My dad is a steel worker, right? Like his stuff is booming right now. I understand that. It's just for people talking about buy American, build American, it's just not going to apply to the hobby, with the exception of low detailed freight kits, low detailed rolling stock. I don't think any models as far as locomotives goes. Maybe scenery and stuff, but it's going to hurt the companies. I guess my big point here is you have to think past all that, all the politics, all the desire for made in America, and I'm on board with you guys there. I totally agree. Stuff should be made in America, but this hobby is going to be an exemption. It's just not going to be made in America, with the exception of what I mentioned. So Americans are too lazy, but paying Chinese people slave wages is okay. Not, but I get your point. Well, this is not like. So one thing I do want to mention is this isn't how we designed it. We didn't start the process, or we didn't create the model railroading industry. This is just what we're dealing with, and this is how the model railroading industry has evolved. I think it was Jason Schron, again, the most transparent CEO so far on the subject, said, that in the 70s they had kind of started this with a certain company in China, and everybody followed suit. So, everybody's different. This hobby's huge. Somebody said, who needs detailed stuff anyway? This hobby's huge. You got people that are kit bashers, custom weatherers. They want to buy the Walther's mainline locomotives and put on all the grab irons themselves and add all the bells and horns and whistles and stuff. And that's fine. There's people that want highly detailed items too, though. So if you're looking at a change in the hobby, like China's just taken out, you're probably going to see either a very long pause while they shift production, if they can even afford to do so. And then you're going to see lower detailed items if they're ever going to be made here. So I just don't see high detailed items being made here. Containers are one example that might be able to be made here because they're pretty simple. They're essentially two pieces snap and press fit together on a lot of containers that don't have electronics. So there are things, but I guess my main concern and my main purpose of this video is the health of the manufacturers and people involved, the people behind the scenes that make the hobby. When I got into this hobby, I got a funny story. I had an Overland brass item, and I said, oh crap, this has a problem, and I emailed Overland Models. So it was like sales@overlandmodels.com or something at the time. And I get a response from Brian Marsh, and it says at the bottom, here's the answer. Sincerely, Brian Marsh, President and CEO, Overland Models. I was like, oh my gosh. So I replied, oh, I'm so sorry, sir. I didn't mean to bother you. I was just hoping to get an answer from a worker or something. And he's like, dude, it's me and my wife. And that's when I first realized there's not nearly as much overhead as we think in this hobby. These aren't massive companies, like I said, with fat cat CEOs with their cognac and their cigars and their buttons that can put somebody through the floor they don't want to talk to. These are small companies, and they employ our fellow hobbyists a lot of times. They employ definitely fellow Americans, and I just don't wish bad on any of them. And I've had some really bad experiences with several people in several companies, and I cannot say that I'm to the point where I'm like, man, I hope they lose their job. So I think that vitriol needs to be taken out, both, like I said, politically and how people feel about the companies. There's a couple really loud people on the internet about how the companies overcharge. Well, you're about to see overcharge because it's going to be high if this goes through, if they are able to even ship their product. So there's vitriol there with things are too expensive, but they have no idea. I'm not seeing anybody, with the exception of like one CEO that was in the hobby for a very, very long time, that's not even in the hobby anymore, that had really a lavish lifestyle. So it's something that I think is a big misconception, that the hobby companies are just loaded. If they had no employees, no overhead, yeah, they'd be loaded, because they've got tooling costs of $250,000 for a locomotive, or $150,000 plus for rolling stock. So yeah, you have to have that money sitting around, but you have to have that money for tooling to turn around and pay for employment, salary, wage, benefits, cost of your facilities, shipping costs, you name it. So yeah, if they had no overhead, yeah, they'd be loaded, but they have a lot of overhead. So you talk to any of your friends that may work in hobby industries, they're not making really lucrative salaries, I'll tell you that much. And I don't even know any CEOs that make lucrative salaries. Matter of fact, a long time ago, I had a CEO tell me, we were just talking about salary, and I didn't even think my salary was that high at the time. And he said, well, what would it take for you to come work over here? What's your salary now? And I told them, and they're like, man, I don't even pay myself that. That was a CEO saying that. So, and like I said, it was nothing to shake a stick at. I was like a middle-level manager in the military. So just keep in mind that these companies are not the fat cats you think they are. Try to support them when you can. And in this case, the letter, purchasing the items that do come in at increased prices will do that. Hopefully we don't get to that point, but I wanted to get out and in front of that with the video. So if you're just joining me, please, go back and see what the main points were. But essentially I covered 3 main points for what hobby companies can do, and a couple of things we can do to help these hobby companies during this time. And I get comments. I just saw one about the quality of products is terrible. I'm learning more about that too, and it's a bear, because they design stuff and they send it over, and if somebody is not there holding their hands, which again is an affordability issue with like a higher level manager of a company over there at the factory, you're gonna have problems. Like, I've got problems all the time. I just tried to run a 110 car or 130 car auto rack train, and it was just coming apart everywhere, derailing. I've got wheels out of gauge. I've got couplers that need to go, coupler heights completely off. It's just impossible with the quantity they do to have like a perfectly executed model. The most recent model I've seen that was as close to perfectly executed as I could find was the Broadway Limited business cars, the Kennefic, and that was actually produced in Vietnam, I believe. Hold on a second. Yep, made in Vietnam, right there in the bottom. So Broadway has already started to shift production, what they can, to Vietnam, because I think they got a taste of this 2016 to 2020, and so they need to find other options. So but that was a really well produced product, so we could see increased quality out of this too, but it really shouldn't be what we're getting out of this. This is a time we need to support our hobbyists, both that work in the companies and the companies themselves any way they can. Like I said, sending the letter, buying the product would probably do that. So hopefully you realize we remain the same. Oh, so pre-order pricing. If they've announced a pre-order price, a lot of companies have come out and said that will have a line item addition onto it if it delivers with those tariffs. So expect that to happen. If you pre-order something for $119, you may easily see a line item tax or tariff ad of $39 upon delivery or more. It's just a completely spitballed number. But a lot of companies have said they're not going to be able to honor their pre-order prices. One company, I think, on their lower tariffs went ahead and ate it because it was like 10% or something. But they're not going to be able to honor that. So you will get a line item ad, but you do have the option through your dealer then to cancel. So all I'm saying is think real hard about canceling. One, because you don't know how good or bad this will get. In the best case scenario, this product is produced, it's released. If you're not buying it and everybody else is, and you just can't find it from now on, chances are this is going to cause at least a disruption that you won't see that reran for years. Because the other thing I didn't talk about is what's going to happen in the ports. There's going to be, for those manufacturers, even not model train manufacturers that have decided we're going to pause shipments, if those tariffs come off and they start resuming shipments, it doesn't matter when a model train company says they're putting it to port. If it's in a line that's a mile long to get out of port, you're going to have delays there. So FOMO is a real thing, but you could actually, I've tried to avoid FOMO. So it's called fear of missing out. So I'll not buy something sometimes. I don't need it, but then I get worried about missing out. And then sure enough, if I didn't buy it, it's impossible to find. So if you look at almost everything on the internet that's impossible to find that's model trains, it's because I didn't decide to buy it. So it's a real thing in the sense of you could actually miss out. So take that into account if you're even able to get the products shipped over, if those companies decide to go ahead and ship those over at increased prices. So that's about that. I think we covered everything else question-wise. Now, I will cover some things I saw on the Facebook pages. People were complaining about prices being raised for stuff in the warehouse. And there's a company that was raising the prices for stuff in the warehouse, and it just looked like they were taking advantage of the situation. Well, number one, I wouldn't put it past that company. It's on the horizon. But second of all, in their defense, maybe they can't differentiate in their software between stuff that's in the warehouse and stuff that's coming. So maybe that's why they had to blanket raise everything. I don't know. But I wouldn't put it past them just to try to squeeze out a few extra bucks. So who knows? But there's no reason that if the item has been here, especially since like February, that they are now putting these type of price increases on those products. So now the ship date, I think, is what it goes off of. So you may see stuff lag a little bit and be different than the current tariff rate, because it takes weeks from the ship date to the arrival date to really transition, sometimes like 6-8 weeks to get the products here. So there could be some inconsistencies there. But if you've seen something in stock at blah blah blah.com and you know it's been out since last year and they've raised the price, it's either them trying to be greedy or they can't differentiate it in the software. I don't really see any other options other than that. So there's your answer there. All right, guys, I think my little gimbal thing's going to die soon. So hope I covered all of your answers, or questions, I should say. But I'm not seeing anything else to cover, but I'll try to be in the comments as well after this. So hopefully I gave you some input into what's going to happen with these tariffs if they continue. Now, I could have done all this in vain, and I kind of hope my luck that typically works this way, because spend all this time on a video, and then tomorrow morning they announce that they've reached an agreement with China and it's way lower. That's my kind of luck, because I'll spend time on stuff, and the modelers will say they'll make a kit bashed item and then it'll be announced the next week when they're finished. I'm that guy, except I don't have the talent really, but I'm that luck kind of guy sometimes. So we'll see if that happens. You probably hear a bunch of noises you don't hear during videos because I haven't told everybody to be quiet, but that's kind of the stuff that happens. So I'm hopeful maybe that my bad luck will result in a deal tomorrow morning or something, or Monday morning, but who knows? So that's the answer on tariffs from the modeler perspective, what I could gather from the company perspective. This video was a little work in the making. I took several Facebook and forum posts and watched a lot of videos, and watched videos from model train manufacturers, and watched videos from just political videos about tariffs and how they work, and got all of that information together for you to give you a good picture. So I hope it is of use for you. But if again, in recap, if you want to help, I've got a letter format on Facebook.com/HO scale product reviews that you can copy and paste to your legislator or the president. And I've got, you've got the ability to buy it if it does make it here. The manufacturers are stuck with the decision on whether to ship it, whether to increase prices, how much to increase prices, or whether to pause and possibly have the financial ramifications of that. Even if they do ship it, there's going to be a percentage of people that aren't going to buy, and that can have financial ramifications as well. So let's hope the best for them, put politics aside, put personal vitriol aside, and hope the best for our manufacturers that are Americans working with Chinese workers to produce American prototype products, stuff that we buy. So this is a lot more about America than you think it is. So with that said, thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me on the live stream. We'll see you next time right here on the channel. Take care.